Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the more underrated water decks of the format, and it's Marincess. So I've been having a lot of fun with this deck. It's very similar to most Cyber's one-card combo decks like Salamangreat, but you know why they're separated by tiers, right? Because they can search their counter traps while we can't. And so that's one of the things that keeps Marincess from being played in today's meta. But it has a lot of cool, unique things, such as being able to make 8 walking towers that can constantly generate resources. So I do have a Discord channel. I'll link it in the description like always from now on. And in there we have a bunch of different water deck and archetype channels to discuss, share replays, and deck lists moving forward. So getting on to the deck profile, we play 3 Marincess Blue Tang. This is your main starter for the deck. She is a level 4 water monster with 1500 A attack, and on summon she can dump a Marincess monster, and when she's linked off, you can excavate the top 3 cards of your deck to add a Marincess card amongst them to your hand. So this build, I'm trying to maximize on Marincess targets because a Marincess monster plus Parallel Exceed equals an access code combo. So for our second most important Marincess card, we have these beautiful Starlight rares. This card has 2 effects. You can special summon this card from your hand to zone Marincess points to, and this card is in the graveyard except the turn it was sent there. You may banish it to special summon a water monster from your hand. Now, this deck is notorious for being able to maintain a lot of resources, so cards that have 2 effects, such as being an effect in the hand or the field plus an effect in the graveyard, lets you play the long game. For our third Marincess monster, we play 3 Pascalis, or I choose to play 3. Some people choose to play less. She, paired with any other Marincess monster, is a combo, because being able to have 2 Marincess monsters on the field that don't really have any other effects, such as this plus maybe Blue Tang, because they don't really have a whole bunch of other graveyard effects that can help you. This is more of a chancy card. This just lets you be able to go into a protected Mermail boss monster. She also has a graveyard effect that helps recycle your Marincess spell and trap cards. The last Marincess card I play is 3 Mandarins. Some people play 2 copies of this card. I choose to play 3 because we're going to be banishing a lot of cards in our main deck because of the new Marincess boss monster, as well as some other tech choices in this build. Now this card is full combo when paired with 1-for-1, and a lot of these Marincess monsters do get effects in the grave, so they're also kind of good if you discard them, for example, Silent Mining or some other monster you choose to play. So we have 12 main deck Marincess monsters, and all these cards are technically 1-card combo stuff. The worst card to open only 1 copy of is Pascalis because she doesn't really get you anywhere, but opening like 2 of any of these cards leads to some variation of your full combo. For the extenders, this is a proxy for Parallel Exceed. I'm going to put it in the left corner. Parallel Exceed is a level 8 wind Cyrus monster that if you link summon a link monster, you can special summon this card to the zone it points to, and if this card is special summoned by a Parallel Exceed, you can special summon a copy from your deck. Essentially, you special summon this card from your hand when you link off a Marincess into a Marincess link monster, then you can special summon a second Parallel Exceed from your deck, and both of their levels become 4. Therefore, you can use them both as material, or make and rank 4 Exceed monster using both of them. For the last monster extenders I play, I'm testing around with 2 Scriptons. This is a level 5 water Cybers monster with 1500 attack, and you can special summon it from your hand by banishing a Cybers monster from your graveyard. Now this card does have some other issues in terms of not being able to start your combos without prior setup, but cards like Nemesis Umbrella, which is another water extender in Tourney Code, also need some setup, and so unless you're playing the Swap Frog engine, I don't really recommend playing Nemesis Umbrella, because most of the time with Scripton, you're able to have more attack and use some other things, such as link climbing and recycling back your other banished cards. For the hand traps, I really think Phantasme is an underrated pick in this format. A lot of decks play the Crystron Halka Firebricks package where you basically use Jet Synchron with tuning or tuning to fetch Jet Synchron to go into Halka Firebricks, who goes into Auradon, and then Auradon goes into Herald of the Arclight, as well as a Borreload Savage Dragon. So most decks, even at Emancipators, they're going to summon Halka Firebricks, and so being able to drop this to dig 2 cards deeper into your deck and look for more hand traps to stop them, or even you're going second cards, I think this is a very valuable pick. The card itself is pretty cheap. So I do recommend, if you guys are going to think about picking it up, maybe use my TCG Player link when you make your purchase on TCG Player. Doing that costs you nothing extra, but also allows me to get some kickback to pick up some cards like these proxies you see that I'm using on my channel. So the cards we want to draw into with Phantasme are 3 Ash Blossoms. This card is very, very good this format. Of course, you might struggle against Adamantimators because an Ash isn't going to stop it. You kind of need 2 or 3 hand traps to do it, but this card can stop their Gallant Granite from searching Block Dragon, and also stop their Block Dragon a little bit until you DD Crow it. But the main purpose of this is to stop your opponent from using Halqifibrax combos in Eldritch and to stop them from getting access to the Golden Lord. This also hits Extravagance and other form of control draw cards that control decks play. The last hand trap I play that's a monster is DD Crow. This card's also very invaluable this format. This also definitely hurts the water decks, which are starting to make a bit of a comeback. It also hits any graveyard-centric deck, which is basically the format we're going into once these online events kind of start to transition into physical events. So this card is not once per turn, which is why I really like it. Opening 2 means you can use both in the same turn. Typically, me if I play competitively or I want to play a build that uses hand traps, I choose to go for a 3-2-2-2 because when I see multiple hand traps, I want to see multiple different hand traps and not multiples of the same. But for consistency reasons, only playing Ash means you never have to worry about drawing the wrong hand trap, and you can maximize the chances of opening the good hand trap. Another good choice, I think, is Ghost Ogre, because Ghost Ogre can remove cards off of the field, which is very good in disrupting Halqifibrax combos. Moving on to the spell cards. 2 Marincess Battle Ocean. This is a Marincess Crystal Heart Towers focused build, hence why I'm not playing Swap Frogs. And you're going to might be a bit annoyed with some of my extra deck choices, but this is a different Marincess build than your typical ones with Swap Frogs and the Newman Locks. Having 2 Battle Oceans means that if your opponent decides to just remove it from the field, because a lot of decks are playing main deck spell and trap removal, you definitely want to have the backup card. For combo cards, 1 for 1, this is full combo with Mandarin. Also sets up some Marincess stuff in your graveyard that can be used from the graveyard. So it's actually not even a minus, it's actually kind of like a +2. 3 Silent Minings. For some reason, I always thought this was a quick play spell card, but obviously it isn't. I think it's just the color combination that's kind of messing with my head. These cards are also fairly cheap as ultra rares that are reprinted in Dual Overload. So basically, you can send any monster from your hand to the graveyard. Most of your Marincess cards, for example, like Mandarin and Seahorse, actually have a lot of advantage being in the graveyard. And so having this card be able to dump those to search for Blue Tang is definitely a plus in my book. The last spell cards I choose to run are 2 Cosmic Cyclones. This is a 40 card build, so if it were my choice, I would actually choose to play 3 of these because being able to wipe out the Buster Whelp block or Dragon Buster lock with Union Carrier, being able to wipe out Eldritch cards as well as Floodgates is an invaluable resource to have in any deck that likes to play the grind game. The last 6 cards we have in our deck are 3 Infinite Impermanence and of course 3 Marincess Wave. You could argue playing 1 copy of Foolish Burial Goods because you don't brick with it and it gives you access to Wave early on in the game. Our biggest struggle as a Marincess deck is being unable to search for this turn 1. You have to either hard draw it or draw into it as the turns go on. And this card acts very much like Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence has 2 effects, of course. You can negate a monster effect, and any cards activated in this column, such as spell and trap cards, will be negated until the end of the turn. Wave, on the other hand, has 3 effects, and of course you can target one. If you control a Marincess Link monster, you can target a monster your opponent controls, and negate its effects until the end of phase. Secondly, if you control a Link 2 Marincess monster, all monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's card effects until the end of this turn, which basically makes all of your monsters towers, unaffected by cards destruction, spinning them back with card effects, negated card effects, all that stuff is gone. So if you drop, let's say, a Totally Awesome or some other form of negation, heck, you can even make them basically invulnerable for the rest of this turn. And its third effect is if you control Link 3 or higher Marincess monster, you can use this card from your hand, basically like an Infinite Impermanence. So because we equip a lot of equip spells to our Marincess Link monsters using the field spell, I am choosing not to play a control heavy build. Although I really do think this deck can be played control heavy with Swap Frogs as well as some Paleozoic and more control based trap cards. This is how I'm choosing to run this build for now. And so far I'm using the hand traps as a way to stop the opponent going second if we lose the die roll. I also think it's worth to mention that the cheapest cards in this deck are also some of the best cards in this deck. Currently Blue Tang, last I checked, is $4 to $5 on TCG Player. We're talking $4 to $5 for the best main deck Marincess monster, and 50 cents for the best Marincess trap card. Now, if we were to get any generic spell or trap card support that any deck can use to, like, say, dump or search for spell or trap card, this card becomes a lot more better because you can search it easier. So this is a really decent picks to pick up if you're scared these cards might go up in value in the future. For the extra deck, I chose to use the access code stuff from Eternity Code. This is more of a tech choice, so of course it ends up taking the spots of some of our other Exceed monsters. But with Parallel Exceed, we have access to a lot more generous rank 4 package other than just the generic water ones. And I will show you a combo at the end of this video, which I was inspired by a person who posted in the Salamangrator Facebook page. This is a generic, of course, Cybers combo, but any Cybers deck can play it with Parallel Exceed. So for the Marincess Link monsters, 2 blue slugs, this card is your combo starter when paired with, say, blue tank or seahorse. 1 Sea Angel, this card lets you get the field spell into circulation. It's not really needed after that because we have Pascals to constantly recycle it. Link 2s, we have 2 Crystal Hearts. You could make the argument of playing 1, but I really think 2 is important, especially if we aren't going to be recycling this card back into the extra deck. If this card gets into the graveyard, we want to revive it with Coral Anemone. But, of course, having 2 Crystal Hearts means if you don't want to do that and instead keep your resources elsewhere, you're able to just freely go into this, then go into one of your 3 Marincess boss monsters. 2 Coral Anemone, this is the best Marincess extra deck monster, as evident from being played in many water decks across the entire game. Anemone lets you basically revive a water monster, but locks you into waters like Blue Slug, but it lets you add stuff back from your graveyard to your hand. For Marincess boss monsters, 1 Marbled Rock. I had a bunch of these cards in the mail, but they got lost, so there goes $5 for a playset. Very cheap card. I really recommend picking these up if you don't already have it, if you're thinking about building this deck. This card basically lets you revive or take Marincess cards from your graveyard and put it back in your hand. Also, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send 1 Marincess monster from your hand to the graveyard. For that battle, your monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage. 1 Marincess Wonder Heart. This card is basically your OTK machine, which honestly isn't that important now that we have access code talker. So this card might actually be cut from the build. For the final Marincess card, which is the 10th card in our extra deck, this is Marincess Great Bubble Reef. This is a 2600 attack link for Marincess monster that lets you draw a card every single turn by banishing a water monster from your graveyard or hand. So the main purpose of this card is that it finally gives your deck the draw power it always needed, so you don't have to play Pot of Desires anymore. And this card also has some cool effects where it's just removed from the field. You can revive stuff from your graveyard. For the access code talker engine, we have 3 different cards. We play Update Jammer as our link 2. We make this using both of our Parallel Exceeds. This lets us use any monster, we use it as material to have 2 attacks in the battle phase this turn. 1 Transcode Talker. This card basically lets you revive a link 2. We're going to link into this using Update Jammer and use Update Jammer and this to go into Access Code Talker, giving it 5,300 attack and being able to pop 3 cards on the field because you have 3 different attributes used to go into Access Code Talker. This is basically your OTK engine as well as your huge onboard presence. For the final 2 monsters, of course, we're playing Abyss Dweller. This is a graveyard-centric format. So Abyss Dweller can be made with either your Marincess monsters as well as Parallel Exceeds. You know, Bahamut Shark needs 2 waters, and if you're playing Exceeds, which are wind types, you can't really go into Bahamut Shark. Finally, this is actually a really cool tech choice that I've been trying out. Light Dragon at Ignister. It has 3 effects, and you can use all 3 in the same turn. So its first effect, generically, it requires 2 level 4 monsters. You can make it every single day. But its first effect, if the monster you control be destroyed by a card effect, you can detach material instead. So it's built-in protection. Second effect is you can detach 1 material from this card. Destroy face-up monsters your opponent controls up to the number of at Ignister monsters you control. This is non-targeting monster destruction, which is generically pretty good. Its third effect is when another Cybers monster you control, which is basically all of your monsters. If it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target 1 Link monster in your graveyard and revive it. Meaning you can basically revive all of your stuff and poke for more damage. That rounds off the deck profile for Marincess cards. I may explore a control variant sometime in the future. I don't really like clogging my entire feed with multiples of the same archetype deck profiles, just because I think some people find it annoying. I personally don't like to just, spam out 5 different deck profiles, because if you're someone looking to play the deck, you could get very, very confused on what build is the superior build. But before I actually finish off this profile, let's take a look into that Parallel Exceed combo. So for this combo, you're going to need one of your 4 Marincess main deck monsters, as well as a copy of Parallel Exceed. Now, we're not playing Format Skipper or Lady Debug in this build, and so this is actually not a 1-card combo, it's a 2-card combo. But being able to just use this card during late game, you can still link summon every single turn you want, so it's pretty good. Now for the Marincess monsters, I have them ranking from best to worst. Blue Tang obviously is your best main deck monster, it does like 2 different things at once. Seahorse is good if you have other sort of extenders. Mandarin's there if you have 2 Marincess monsters, and Pascalis is the worst one single by herself. But when she's paired with other stuff, she's pretty good. So for the sake of this combo, we're going to use Pascalis just to show you that you can do it even with your worst Marincess monster, and with Parallel Exceed. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to normal summon the Pascalis and link her off into a blue slug. We are not going to use Blue Slug's effect to return this to the hand. That's because if we do, we'll be locked into waters for the rest of this turn. From here, we can use this card's effect, Parallel Exceed, because you special summon a link monster. We'll special summon himself from here, use his effect to special summon a copy from the deck, and now they're both level 4. From here, we can use both of these to either, for example, go into an Abyss Dweller. If we happen to have, let's say, Blue Tang or Marincess Seahorse, we can then use Blue Slug's effect and do some link climbing. But for the access code combo, we are just going to use both Parallel Exceeds and go into an Update Jammer. From here, we'll use Update Jammer plus Marincess Blue Slug and link climb into Transcode Talker. Transcode Talker is going to special summon the Update Jammer, which is your link 2 from the graveyard. And we're going to use both of these to go into a link for Access Code Talker. Access Code Talker uses a link 3 monster, so it has 5,300 attack, so it has plus 3,000 attack. And it can banish a Earth, a Dark, and a Water from your graveyard to blow up 3 cards on the field. And it has 5,300 attack and can attack twice because you use Update Jammer to link summon into this. Alright, so that's it guys. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. Why not subscribe if you've made it this far? This channel is all about water decks, and there's going to be a lot more where that comes from in the future.